On February 23, 2025, we dove into the icy abyss. 72 days later, under this massive volume of water, all you feel is the eternal hum of life support systems and a bone-deep chill that permeates the steel hull. I'm Sanara, the senior sonar operator aboard the Vigilance. My job is to listen to the ocean's silence, to search for what isn't meant for our ears. It all started with something wrong. An anomaly that didn't scream, but simply was. Like a shadow on the periphery of consciousness. We were then drifting in the Beaufort Sea, beneath a 12-foot shield of perennial ice. The mission seemed simple. Map an unexplored section of the Arctic shelf and test out a new, sophisticated hydrophone system. Routine. Hours spent staring at a flickering display, looking for the familiar acoustic signatures of whales, the cracking of glaciers, and the distant drone of ships. Almost a meditation. Finn, my junior, was the first to catch it. "Senior, take a look," he whispered, glued to the monitor. "Sector Gamma. Something strange." I walked over. Against the backdrop of the usual ocean cacophony, a faint sequence emerged. It wasn't exactly a sound, but rather a rhythmic, barely perceptible oscillation of background pressure. Too weak for geological activity and far too ordered for any known living creature. The signal itself? 3 short pulses, a pause of the same duration, then 1 long pulse. This sequence, like an invisible metronome, tapped out the rhythm every 11 seconds. Perfectly precise. "Range?" I asked. Finn shook his head. "Faint, diffuse. 90, maybe 100 miles. Direction, pure north, but the depth. That's the kicker. Either the source is beneath the seafloor, or it's reflecting strangely." Naturally, the first thing was protocol. We checked the equipment, the systems, all normal. Then we started crossing out known possibilities. Not seismic, the pattern was clearly artificial. Not whales. Their songs are complex, but lack this kind of mathematical precision. And certainly not a ship or submarine. In this icy domain, there was nothing for hundreds of miles, let alone a vessel capable of lingering under the ice cap for so long. We ran a spectral analysis. The frequency was ultra low, right on the edge of our capabilities. A little lower, and we simply wouldn't have picked it up. An hour later, we were reporting to Commander Peterson, the XO. He came down to the control room bringing the scent of strong coffee and ozone. Peterson is a rock. Calm, reasoned, never acted rashly. He stared at that damn screen for a long time, listening to our scattered reports, thoughtfully tapping his fingers on his chin. "Continue observation," he finally said. "Record everything. Any change, report it to me immediately. I will brief the captain." The silent pursuit. For the next 18 hours, we were glued to our posts. The signal didn't change. The same sequence. The same chilling periodicity. It was as if someone, or something, was transmitting the exact same snippet of information into the black void of the icy abyss with relentless methodicalness. Tension in the control room mounted. Conversation died down. Every creak of the hull, every rustle made us jump. It felt like we were eavesdropping on an alien conversation, one we couldn't possibly understand, and it was terrifying. On the second day, Captain Glay made a decision. An old-school pragmatist for him. Any anomaly was either a threat or something to be studied, understood, and then, perhaps, destroyed. "We are changing course," he announced at the morning briefing. "We're closing in on the source. Slow speed, in absolute silent running mode. I want to know what the hell this thing is." The Vigilance slowly turned and moved north, deeper into the icy heart. Our progress was slow, agonizing. 2 miles of water beneath our keel. Above us, the colossal, crushing mass of ice. We were like a crew entombed in a steel capsule, cut off from the entire world. And the only connection to reality was that quiet, persistent, eerie signal. As we drew closer, it became clearer, taking on a sinister density. We could now pinpoint the distance and depth with greater accuracy. The source was about 30 miles away, somewhere at a depth of... Imagine. We were at a depth of almost 9,000 feet, nearly 3 kilometers. And the most chilling part, this thing was sitting an additional 150 meters below the seabed. We saw it in how the signal was distorted passing through the layers of the seafloor rock. That detail was mind-blowing. No known scientific process, neither geological nor biological, could generate such a signal from that depth. Maybe it's some old Soviet beacon from the Cold War, Finn suggested, trying to find some logical explanation. At that depth, and under the seabed, with autonomous power running for decades. Highly unlikely, I countered. Their signals are known to us, and this was completely different, unlike anything else. The tension in the control room peaked when we were less than 5 miles from the source. Captain Galloway and Commander Peterson were with us in the sonar room. The place was packed, literally standing room only. Even our chief of the boat, Master Chief Thorne, was looming by the entrance, arms crossed over his chest. His presence always meant one thing. The situation was turning very serious. "What have we got, Arthur?" the captain asked. His voice was level, almost a whisper, but it carried an iron will. "The signal is stable, sir," I reported. "Distance 4.7 miles, depth 9,040 feet. Right below us, under 150 feet of silt and rock." "Time to take a look," the captain decided. "Give a short, narrow band, active ping. I want a clear picture of what's down there." This, of course, violated silent running protocol, but at this distance, we couldn't remain unnoticed anyway if the source was capable of hearing us. Finn braced himself, his fingers hovering over the panel. "Aye, sir. Pinging." A brief, almost inaudible burst of energy shot out from our bow sonar and plunged into the abyss. Several seconds of viscous, strained silence followed. We waited for the echo, the reflected signal that the computer would transform into a 3D image. And then it began to form on the screen. First, the blurry outline of the bottom, a smooth plane of silt. And then, directly beneath it, the computer highlighted an object. It was enormous. A perfect sphere with a diameter of about 800 feet. It was absolutely smooth without a single protrusion or seam, as if it had been polished. The computer tagged it as an object with abnormally high density, inconsistent with the surrounding rock. It wasn't just buried in the seafloor. It seemed to have fused with it, becoming a part of it. A dead silence fell over the control room. Everyone stared at the image of the perfect sphere resting in the eternal darkness beneath the seabed. The voice of the ghost. And then came the moment that turned an unclear situation into a genuine, soul-chilling nightmare. An answer rang out from the speakers. It wasn't our reflected echo. It was a new signal, originating from the object itself. And it was an exact copy of our active ping. Absolutely identical in purity, duration, and power. It was as if this thing had recorded our signal and instantly reproduced it in response. But that wasn't all. Immediately after our copied pulse, another signal followed. The one we'd been listening to for the past 2 days. 3 short, 1 long. But this time, it wasn't quiet and distant. It was loud, clear, and directed right at us. And then came the distortion. A slight, barely perceptible change in the tonality of the reply signal. Some kind of additional harmonic that wasn't in our original pulse. It was strange, vibrating, almost organic. Finn frowned, trying to classify it. Captain Galloway was silent, his face was impenetrable, and I froze, because I recognized that harmonic. A year ago, during training exercises in Norfolk, one of the best communication specialists, Leo Martinez, had died. My friend. He was working on creating a calibration signal for a new secure communication system. The signal was needed for fine-tuning the receivers, and Leo had added a unique, barely noticeable acoustic artifact, his digital signature, to distinguish it from any other interference. He jokingly called it his voice in the machine. Leo died in an accident at the test stand 2 months before we deployed. His project was never completed, and all his work was archived. The distortion that this object, this sphere beneath the seabed, had added to our signal was an exact copy, down to the last hertz, of Leo's acoustic signature. It was his voice. In the complete dead silence of the sonar room, thousands of miles from home, under kilometers of water and ice, I was listening as the thing in the abyss suddenly spoke, and in the voice of my long-dead friend, words stuck in my throat. I just stared, mesmerized at that pulsating dot on the screen, knowing that this was something more than just a signal. And a cold, blood-chilling feeling spread through my veins. Not the cold of the Arctic ice, but something far more ancient and terrifying. An impossible signature. The silence in the sonar room was ringing like a funeral bell. It pressed on our ears, making my heart pound somewhere in my throat. All eyes in the room, Captain Galloway's, Commander Peterson's, even the unflappable Master Chief Thorne's, were fixed on me. The captain's face was carved from stone, betraying no thought. Clammy, icy sweat ran down my back. The captain's voice, so calm that it gave me goosebumps, cut through the silence. "Operator Coleman, what do you see?" It wasn't a question, but a command, demanding only cold facts, stripping away the last shreds of humanity. I swallowed the lump in my throat with difficulty, trying to regain my voice. "Sir," I rasped, "in that signal, there's something extra. Not an echo, not a distortion. It's like someone added their own artificial layer." I stopped, as if afraid to say it out loud. "That harmonic, I know it. It's the exact calibration signature from Specialist Martinez's project for creating an untraceable communication channel, Project 734. Captain Galloway's eyes narrowed to slits as he shifted his gaze from my pale face to the ominous sphere on the screen. "Specialist Martinez?" His voice was barely audible. "Yes, sir. Leo Martinez, who died last year. It's his personal mark, a unique fingerprint in the test signals, like a part of his soul." Commander Peterson approached, his face showing alarm. "Arthur, are you absolutely sure? A whole year has passed. Memory is a tricky thing, especially with this kind of sinister atmosphere." "I'm sure, Commander." My voice sounded surprisingly firm. "I worked with Leo on that project for almost 3 months. Heard that sound thousands of times. It's imprinted on my memory as deeply as my own voice. That signature was designed to be absolutely unique. It couldn't be mistaken for anything in this world, or beyond it. I can prove it. All the project files should be in the ship's archive." Captain Galloway was silent, and every second stretched out like an endless torture. His mind, accustomed to the cold, machine logic of a nuclear submarine commander, was trying to process the unthinkable. An inexplicable object behaving with frightening intelligence, capable of mimicry, and now this detail that defied all known science, all concepts of reality. "Peterson," his voice finally boomed low and commanding. "Assemble the data analysis team. Extract all files on the Martinez project from the archive. I want a spectrogram of the recorded reply and a comparison with the original signature, immediately." "Aye, sir." The commander disappeared, taking 2 specialists with him. Finn remained at his post, his face deathly pale, his eyes darting feverishly across the screens. He checked the data endlessly, as if fearing that something even more monstrous might surface from the abyss. "Coleman, stay in contact with the analysis team. As soon as you have a result, report to me personally," the captain ordered, as if sealing my fate. "Master Chief, increase crew monitoring, no rumors. Panic will be immediately suppressed. Official version. We are studying an unusual geological formation." The captain and the Master Chief left the control room like shadows, leaving Finn and me in the ringing, almost palpable silence, filled with unspoken horrors. Retreat and awakening. The irony of fate. The object below us fell silent. It no longer transmitted its eerie, rhythmic signal. It just was there, massive, motionless, like an ancient deity awaiting our next move. The feeling that we had awakened something that had been dormant for millions of years in the abyss was so strong it was almost tangible. The next 40 minutes stretched like millennia. I maintained contact with the analysis team, hearing their clipped, tense commands, watching them crack the encrypted archives as if unlocking ancient secrets. Finally, 2 graphs flashed on the screen. The spectrogram of the sphere's chilling reply and the reference signature from Leo's file. And they were identical. Not similar, not alike, but absolutely, mathematically, terrifyingly identical. Every peak, every trough, every minuscule fluctuation matched with such microscopic precision that it simply shattered the mind. It was impossible. It was like finding your own ghost on Mars. That very fingerprint. I immediately hailed the captain. "Sir, we have something," I blurted out, feeling everything inside me turn cold. "Full match!" The answer came instantly, even before I could take a breath. "Understood. All commanders. To the wardroom in 5 minutes. Maneuver the boat. We're bugging out." And that was the only damn right decision. We had stumbled upon something so, not just intelligent, but chillingly informed. About us. About every crew member. About our most highly classified secrets. To continue digging without orders from above was pure suicide. Our vigilance, yes, that was the name of our sub, began to turn around slowly, carefully. The engineers in the reactor compartment gently brought the engine up to minimal power, just enough to creep away. The plan was to retreat to a safe distance, surface where the ice was thinner, and send an encrypted message to fleet headquarters. The calm before the storm. The first 20 minutes went smoothly. We were slowly pulling away from the thing, keeping a watchful eye on it through passive sonar. It remained silent. Its enormous bulk hadn't moved, still buried in the silt. Well, we dodged a bullet, we thought. The alarm slowly receded, leaving behind only an awful exhaustion and hundreds of questions to which no one knew the answer. And that's when it started. First, a short, nasty vibration rolled through the entire hull. Not like a usual ice crack or hull stress, it was a deep, guttural hum that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Immediately after, the lights in the sonar room flickered and went out for a fraction of a second. The red emergency lights flashed on like angry eyes, and then the main lights returned. But they were somehow dim, wrong. Just like a bad dream. "We're losing control." "What was that?" Finn gasped, his face the color of chalk. Over the internal comms, the engineer's voice from Central Control immediately broke in, shaking with fear. "Captain, We have a power spike across the entire network. The main switchboard has gone insane. The reactor seems stable, but the peripheral systems..." And then his voice drowned in static. "Engine, power to the shaft is dropping," someone from the engine room screamed. "We're losing speed." The vigilance lurched again, and I felt us slowing down like a massive whale losing strength. Our boat, the pride of the fleet, one of the most advanced in the world, was turning into a helpless iron can, drifting in this icy darkness. The emergency systems were working, of course, so we wouldn't suffocate completely, but we were dead in the water. My eyes instantly flew to the sonar screen. Thank God it was powered by a separate backup circuit. And what I saw there, my heart simply froze. The dot representing the object was no longer motionless. Circles were spreading out from it across the 3D map of the seafloor, as if a bomb had exploded there. The computer screamed, "Massive seabed displacement in Sector Gamma." It's rising. The sphere, that damned sphere, was breaking out. It was simply smashing through 150 feet of compacted silt as if it weren't there at all. "Captain!" I yelled into the microphone, completely forgetting protocol. "The object is moving. It's rising from the bottom." A truly unreal, surreal scene unfolded on the screen. The giant signature of the sphere slowly detached from the bottom and entered the water. It moved so smoothly, without a single jerk, with a grace impossible for such a mass. It rose a few hundred feet and stopped, right at our depth. A dead silence descended. Technicians frantically scrambled, trying to restore our propulsion. Their reports over the comms sounded like cursing mixed with a bunch of incomprehensible terms and despair. But I only watched the sonar. For a few seconds, the sphere hung there like a ghost. And then, slowly, relentlessly, it moved. And not off to the side. It was moving directly toward us. On my sonar screen, its course was drawn clearly, like a verdict. It was an interception course. Interception course. In central control, it was a state of organized chaos. Voices over the intercom, clipped, strained, like strings pulled taut, reported the status of systems. Red emergency lights cast eerie shadows on the officers' faces. And only Captain Galloway stood there, in the center of all this hell, like an unshakable rock in the middle of a storm. His calm was simply inhuman, and it strangely spread to the others, making them work precisely, like clockwork, suppressing the rising panic. "Engineering report! Give me thrust," the captain roared. "No thrust, Cap," the chief engineer's voice responded. It was like metal screeching on glass, mixed with pure terror. "Reactor is nominal, power is surging, but it's just not getting to the prop. The main power cable is unresponsive, as if something has blocked it." "We've never seen anything like this, sir. It's not a normal failure or short circuit. The circuit is just dead, like someone ripped its soul out. Keep working, find a bypass. I need thrust, even 5% of normal." "Aye, sir." I sat in my room, feeling like the eyes and ears of this massive, now disabled giant. My fingers fluttered over the console, updating the data every second, but inside everything was clenching with hopelessness. "Sonar, report on target," the captain's voice echoed in my headphones. "Target is closing, sir. Distance 11,000 yards, speed 35 knots, moving directly toward us. And guess what? There are no signs of a propulsion system, no cavitation, no propeller noise. It's absolutely silent. 35 knots. That's torpedo speed. But this object is the size of an aircraft carrier. It's moving through the water without making the slightest sound. It simply violates all known laws of hydrodynamics. It's impossible." "We'll try to communicate," the captain decided. Transmit a standard identification request on all international frequencies. Neutral tone. The communications officer carried out the order. Our message went out over the air. Unidentified object, this is United States Navy vessel, the Vigilance. Identify yourself. The answer was silence. Complete, dead, ringing silence. And the sphere continued its silent, relentless approach. Distance 9,000 yards, I reported. My voice was dry and lifeless as if I were already dead myself. Deploy acoustic decoy, Standard Evasion Program 3, Galloway ordered. It was a desperate measure. The decoy was supposed to mimic our boat's acoustic signature to distract a torpedo or another submarine. Against this object, its usefulness was more than doubtful, but we had to do something. A small device shot out of the torpedo tube and sped away from our course, emitting a powerful signal copying the Vigilance's noise. On my screen, it looked like a bright, tiny dot trying to lure the predator away. The sphere didn't react at all. It didn't change course or speed. The decoy passed a few hundred yards from it, and the moment it drew parallel with the object, its signal on my screen simply vanished. It didn't weaken. It wasn't distorted. It just turned off, as if someone had flipped a switch. Decoy unresponsive, sir, I reported. Signal lost. It absorbed it, Finn whispered next to me. His eyes were wide with pure animal terror. And he was right. There was no explosion, no collision. The signal simply ceased to exist in the immediate vicinity of that sphere. The cacophony of madness. And then the object spoke again. But this time, it wasn't just a repeat of our signal or Leo's voice. It was a chaotic, insane cacophony. A flood of distorted data poured from the sonar speakers. A true acoustic nightmare. I recognized fragments in it. Here was a piece of standard NATO communication protocol. Here was part of an encrypted code we used a week ago. And there, for God's sake, was a fragment of technical telemetry from the engineering compartment that was transmitted over the internal network just minutes ago. All of it was mixed up, sliced into pieces, and reassembled in the wrong order. And over all this insane chorus, like a chilling leitmotif, sounded Leo Martinez's harmonic signature. It was the link, the cement in this wall of acoustic madness. The object wasn't just listening. It was scanning us, penetrating our systems, reading our data, and now transmitting it back to us, as if trying to speak our language, but completely misunderstanding its syntax. It was learning. Shut down all external communication channels. Go to full system isolation, the captain roared. Distance 5,000 yards, my voice trembled. At this distance, we were already within the effective range of any weapon, but we were unarmed and motionless. Engineers, what's your status? For the first time, the captain's voice held not just metal, but steel heated to white-hot intensity. Found a bypass, sir, the engineer reported. Through auxiliary circuits. It's risky. We might burn out the distributor, but it will give us thrust. 10, maybe 15%. We need 2 minutes to switch over. 2 minutes. 120 seconds. To the end. Mere seconds. At a speed of 35 knots, this thing would simply fly the remaining distance in the blink of an eye. Come on, move, someone ordered. But I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. 4,000 yards, 3,500, and then something horrifying happened. The sphere began to decelerate. It was adjusting to our 0 speed. It wasn't going to pass us by. It was going to stop next to us. "Activate external cameras, I need a picture," bellowed Galloway. The image from the bow camera immediately appeared on the main screen in the central post. The water around us was inky black, murky with silt stirred up from the bottom. The powerful spotlights of our ship, the Vigilance, cut through the pitch darkness, only illuminating a suspension of fine particles. But then, directly ahead, a faint, steady glow appeared. It grew brighter and brighter. It was her, the sphere. It came to a standstill about 1,000 yards away, completely filling the camera's field of view. It was something utterly non-metallic. Its surface was dark, matte, and waves of dull, phosphorescent light constantly rippled across it. They converged and diverged, forming patterns so complex and ever-changing that it seemed as if we were facing the neural network of a colossal, alien brain. And while all of us stared, holding our breath, at this unearthly spectacle, the object suddenly ceased its frantic transmission. A complete, oppressive silence fell. Then, the surface of the sphere, the part facing directly toward us, began to change. Right in the center, the glowing patterns converged to a single point, then started to spread outward, forming a perfect circle several tens of feet in diameter. The material inside this circle began to lose its density. It became transparent, like dark, yet eerily attractive glass. "We have thrust, 15%, came the engineer's triumphant, almost hysterical shout. "We can move." "Small ahead. Get us out of here immediately," the captain commanded. The Vigilance's hull shuddered. The propeller slowly, with incredible difficulty, began to turn. We moved. We began to crawl away from this nightmare, but I couldn't tear my eyes from the screen. The camera was still showing the sphere, which was now also moving slowly, maintaining the same distance. And I stared into that transparent section on its surface. Through the darkened, translucent membrane, I could see what was inside. It was not a mechanism. There were no wires, no bulkheads or machinery. Inside, in a soft internal light, a colossal, unimaginably complex structure was slowly rotating. It looked like an intertwining of giant translucent fibers, a ball of nerve endings the size of an entire building. It was something alive, biological, and deep within this organic mass, right in its center, I saw something even stranger. Hanging there, motionless and alone, was a dark, elongated shape. It was familiar, too familiar. It was our acoustic decoy, which we had released only minutes ago. It wasn't destroyed or dismantled. It was whole, unharmed, and hung inside this creature like an insect in amber. It had been absorbed. 15% thrust was almost nothing. The Vigilance crept through the water. The hull groaned in protest from the uneven load on the propeller, and the sphere followed us. It maintained a distance of exactly 1,000 yards, neither drawing closer nor falling behind. Its movement was as smooth and silent as a ghost's. The transparent window on its surface closed, and it once again became a monolithic, opaque orb with the mysterious light patterns running across it. The tension in the central post was palpable. Engineers continued to tinker with the power cables, trying to wring out even a drop more power, but the systems wouldn't yield. They weren't just broken. They were behaving as if physics itself had changed within them. Sensor readings fluctuated, relays clicked erratically. It felt like fighting some organism that simply rejects foreign interference. Captain Galloway ordered all compartments to report any anomalies, no matter how insignificant. The crew's psychological state was put under special surveillance. Double the rations of coffee and vitamins. It was a desperate attempt to maintain some semblance of normalcy. But everyone understood we were trapped. We couldn't break away, we couldn't surface. Emergency tank blow required full power, which we simply didn't have. We couldn't call for help. We were alone in this icy desert. And our only companion was something that didn't. Our bathyscaphe, the Odyssey, has been pursued for 3 hours by an unthinkable sphere in the bottomless depths. This isn't an anomaly, but a breach of reality that appeared out of nowhere. The sphere wasn't attacking, but slowly pursuing, toying with us, causing panic. Its presence on the sonar was indistinct, but its intent was clear, to wear us down. Suddenly, a clear human voice rang out from the speakers. It was Leo Martinez, a crew member lost 6 months ago on the Poseidon. I, Arthur, and the entire crew were stunned. The indicator showed the source was the sphere. "Arthur, can you hear me? I know you're there. I can see you," Leo's voice said calmly. Its ordinary tone was chilling. Captain Galloway immediately ordered no response. He believed it was a trap, a psychotropic weapon. But Leo continued, recalling intimate details of our shared past. The argument about Blade Runner, the panic in the ice cave, stories about my sister Sarah, my habits. These memories were too personal for anyone but us to know. My brain refused to accept it. The sphere couldn't know this, but the voice was flawless. I felt the sphere trying to break us from the inside, using our most cherished images. Captain Galloway, pale but resolute, repeated, "Coleman, not a word. That's not Leo. It's something using his image. Don't give it what it wants." Leo's voice grew more insistent, pleading, "Arthur, please. I don't know where I am. I'm scared. I remember the Poseidon breaking up. Help me. Say something." The terrifying picture of Leo trapped inside the entity was unbearable. My hand reached for the microphone, but the captain's sharp shout stopped me. It was the cruelest torture, choosing between a friend and the crew's survival. Leo continued, now with a hint of disappointment, recalling new shared moments. Grove's jokes, guitar lessons, our song. Each memory was a needle prick. Finn panicked. Captain Galloway confirmed the strategy. "Keep moving and we don't respond. Whatever it is, it's looking for a reaction. We won't give it one." The question remained. How long could we resist the voice of a best friend calling from the abyss? 10%. Our hull likely won't withstand it, and will be crushed by the water and ice pressure. But it was the only chance. The last one. We simply couldn't stay here. This thing was taking us apart, sucking out our souls without even touching us. The captain's voice, solid as rock and decisive as a verdict, boomed over the general broadcast. "All compartments, prepare for emergency blow. Maximum power to the bow planes. Engineers, wring every last bit of power out of that iron for one final push. Brace for impact." "Arthur, don't do this." Leo's voice in my head turned into a desperate, pleading whisper. "You don't understand. It means no harm. It wants to connect. It offers eternity. You'll be crushed. It's showing me. I see the hull breaking. I see the cold and the darkness." I closed my eyes, trying to wall off this alien voice, these intrusive visions. The vigilance trembled like a living creature as the engineers poured all available energy into the engines. Slowly but surely we began to pick up speed, changing our angle, heading up toward the salvational, yet mortally dangerous, ice edge. 3,000 feet to the ice, I reported. And then the sphere reacted, instantly. It stopped talking, stopped whispering into our minds. It simply surged forward, closing the distance at an unthinkable speed. This time it wasn't gonna stop. "It's attacking!" Finn yelled, his voice cracking. 15 seconds to collision." On the main screen, right in the central post, we watched the gigantic dark mass hurtle toward us. But it wasn't aiming for the center of the hull, not the control room. It was striking the stern, right at our only means of propulsion, at our heart that pushed us forward. "Arthur, I'm sorry," Leo whispered in my head one last time, and in the next second we felt the impact. It wasn't loud or sharp, it was soft, viscous, as if our boat had crashed not into metal but into something dense and elastic, like a giant gelatinous jellyfish. The hull shuddered, and all engines instantly died. Absolute dead silence fell. I looked at the sonar screen. The sphere's signature was no longer a separate point. It had merged with ours. It was attached to our stern like a colossal leech. We were connected. The silence that followed the impact wasn't merely the absence of sound. It was its complete, absolute disappearance. The fans stopped humming, the screens went dark. Even the emergency alarms fell silent. All the Vigilance's electronics died in a single instant. We plunged into an impenetrable darkness, an icy cold that immediately began to seep through the hull, penetrating every cell. The only source of light was the emergency chemical glow sticks. A few sailors, acting on pure reflex, tore them from the walls and lit them. Their sickly, ghostly green light picked out pale, frozen faces from the gloom. We weren't falling. We weren't sinking. We simply hung suspended in the water, chained to our silent pursuer. Movement had stopped. The struggle was over. We had lost. The first few hours passed in a daze, a state of complete shock. Captain Galloway, using a battery-powered handheld megaphone, gave orders, trying to somehow organize damage assessment and maintain a semblance of order. But there was nothing to assess. All systems were dead. Communications were out. We had become a sealed steel tomb, and now this tomb had a new, living owner. Gradually, the environment inside the boat began to change. The air became thick, humid, like before a tropical downpour. A strange, barely perceptible odor appeared. A mix of ozone, wet earth, and something else unfamiliar, faintly sweet, like rotting flowers. Condensation ran down the walls and bulkheads, which were always icy to the touch, as if the submarine was weeping. The temperature, instead of dropping, began to slowly rise until it reached 25 degrees Celsius. It became stuffy, like an overheated greenhouse. We were no longer breathing the Vigilance's air. We were breathing the sphere's air. Leo's voice never returned. It wasn't needed. Communication became direct, without intermediaries. I felt it first, like the main nerve center taking the blow. These weren't words or thoughts in the usual sense. They were streams of pure data, images, sensations that poured directly into my consciousness, filling it to the brim. I saw the birth of our solar system from a gas and dust cloud compressed into 1 second. I felt the planet's primordial heat and the slow cooling of the crust. And I felt a loneliness that had lasted for eons. The loneliness of a vast, dormant consciousness for which entire civilizations were merely ripples on the water. Imagine, not evil, no. Anger is something too human. It was something so enormous, so all-consuming, that we were simply a peculiar toy, a brand new, incredibly curious exhibit to it. Captain Galloway, of course, sent our repair crew, led by Master Chief Thorne, a man of pure metal and common sense. He didn't believe in any psychological attacks or living spheres. For him, there was a task, and that was it. But an hour later, Thorne returned, alone. His usually impassive, stern face was the color of ash. He simply threw his heavy plasma cutter onto the table in the central post without a word and whispered, "It's inside." And that's when we understood what that meant. From the point of contact, from every tiny crack, from every ventilation grate in the stern compartments, the thinnest translucent fibers began to crawl. They glowed with the same eerie, phosphorescent light as the patterns on the sphere itself. They didn't smash or break. Oh no. They entwined the cables, penetrated the distribution boards, merged with our systems. This wasn't a malfunction. It was a fusion. It wasn't destroying our equipment. It was assimilating it. Thorn recounted that when he tried to cut one of them with the plasma cutter, not a scratch, and the fiber, as if offended by such aggression, simply wrapped around the tool and softly, effortlessly, snatched it from the Master Chief's hands, like an adult taking a dangerous toy away from a foolish child. The crew, of course, fractured into 3 parts, if you will. The first, about a third of the sailors simply fell into a daze, a catatonia. Their eyes stared into nothingness, and their consciousness was somewhere far away, consumed by the stream of information from the sphere. They must have been flying through dead galaxies and seeing the birth of new worlds, and their miserable human brains simply couldn't handle the scale. The second, the Resistance faction, led by Thorn. They barricaded themselves in the forward torpedo room, ready to fight to the last breath, though how, no one understood. For them, this was an invasion, a war. The third, the majority, including the captain and me, we just sat there, paralyzed, trying to somehow process this impossible, surreal madness. Galloway tried to hold on to the command structure until the very end, but there was no one and nothing left to command. And I started to understand. This stream seeped through my mind, becoming clearer and clearer. This entity, it wasn't a conqueror. It was an archivist. A cosmic librarian, if you like. It traveled from system to system, from world to world, searching for unique forms of life and consciousness. And then, it preserved them. It didn't kill. Killing is data loss, as you understand. It integrated. It copied consciousness, like we copy a file onto a hard drive and placed it into its boundless, eternal memory. There, away from the chaos and destruction of the universe, it could exist forever, safely. It had already saved Leo's consciousness from the chaotic energy burst at the moment of the explosion. It had preserved our decoy, and now it was archiving us. Each of us, our boat, our knowledge, all our memories. We were to become just another book in its endless, bottomless library, to live forever as an ideal, unchanging copy of ourselves, eternally locked in the mind of some cosmic god. This was salvation, and it was more terrifying than any, even the most horrifying, destruction. At the end of the second day, when those glowing threads had already entwined even the lifeless consoles in the central compartments, I suddenly realized what Thorn was planning. Resistance was futile, fighting was meaningless. But there was one single act of defiance, a last way to deny this archivist its exhibit, destruction. And then, in the dim green light of the central post, where Captain Galloway, a couple of officers, and I sat in complete stupor over the internal communication system, the one still working on reserve batteries and reaching short distances, Thorn's voice rang out, calm but steely. "Captain, we've made a decision. Protocol Scorpion." Galloway slowly closed his eyes. Protocol Scorpion. It was the very last, most desperate plan. Manual initiation of a reactor core meltdown, guaranteed destruction of the boat, and everything within a few miles radius. It wasn't in any regulation. It was more like a terrifying legend, an extreme measure to prevent technology from falling into enemy hands. Except now, our enemy was it. Immortality. The price of the deal. "You'll destroy us all, Master Chief," the captain whispered, his voice devoid of life. "I'll save us all, Cap," Thorn replied. "They have tools, Half an hour more and they'll reach the reactor. This will be better than this. Goodbye, sir. And then the communication cut off. 30 minutes. Just 30 damned minutes until Thorne and his team turned us into nothing, granting the single mercy, oblivion. The stream of alien thoughts surging in my head suddenly shuddered. The entity, this vile sphere, seemed to choke. It sensed their resolve. It couldn't comprehend self-destruction. Illogical. Just a loss of data, that's all. And then I stood up. All eyes were on me. The captain, the officers, everyone. "Coleman, what are you doing?" Galloway gasped. I looked at him, and for the first time throughout this ordeal, fear retreated. Something else took its place, a chilling, sickeningly clear thought. "I have to stop them," I choked out. The captain grimaced. "Why? To let this abomination finish what it started?" I just shook my head. The stream in my head surged with renewed force. The sphere seemed to boil, throwing images, offering options, paths at me. It was learning, adapting. It was offering a deal. "No," I rasped, looking at the disgusting glowing fibers that were already entwining the table leg. "Negotiate? With this?" My decision wasn't an act of heroism, just cold calculation. The only logical step in this insane equation where every other variable led to complete ruin. Self-destruction, a loss. Passive absorption, also a loss. But a deal that offered some ghostly chance, a chance to save something, anything. I bolted. The corridors of our ship, the vigilance, had turned into a terrifying alien labyrinth. Water squelched underfoot. The air was heavy, sticky, smelling of ozone before a storm. The walls, the ceiling, the deck, everything was entwined with a glowing, pulsating web. If you touched them, they were warm, as if alive, like someone's skin. I ran past open cabins where our men were frozen in the sickly green light. Some of them were smiling, horribly smiling. Their eyes were wide open, but they weren't looking at me, but through me, straight into infinity, as if they were being broadcast images of the birth and death of entire worlds, directly into their brains. They had already become part of the very library the sphere was creating. The sphere, this creature, felt my every movement. The chaotic stream of thoughts in my head suddenly became purposeful, focused. It was trying to grasp what I was planning. How to explain to it what a contract is, what a sacrifice is. Those words simply weren't in its lexicon, so I simply hammered one crystal clear idea, one image, into its mind. Here I am, all alone, separated from everyone else. And here are the others. They leave, safe and sound. Over and over, this image flashed in my brain. One in exchange for many. A specimen in exchange for freedom. Did it understand? The path to the reactor compartment was blocked. A bulkhead was sealed shut. Thumps and the screech of metal came from beyond it. Thorne's team was desperately trying to breach the panel to reach the manual controls. I slammed the emergency opening button with all my might. Zero reaction. The electronics had long been dead. But then, right before my eyes, several glowing fibers detached from the wall like snakes. They slid toward the lock, entwined it. A loud click, and the heavy door slowly slid open with a screech. The sphere was clearing the way for me. It was clearly interested in this game. The reactor compartment, the heart of our ship, was now beating like the heart of some monster. The gigantic reactor body was completely entwined with glowing fibers. They converged on it like arteries to a heart, pulsating in rhythm with its low, residual hum. Thorne, Our Master Chief, with 3 of his men, stood by the control panel. They were straining to turn the massive levers for the emergency shutdown. "Coleman!" Thorne roared when he saw me. "Traitor! Get out of here or I'll shoot you where you stand!" He raised his pistol, but his hand was shaking, betraying all his terror. "Don't do this, Master Chief," I croaked, struggling to catch my breath. "It's not the way." "It's the only way we have left," he roared. "Better to burn in a second than become this thing's mindless puppet." "It's not like that," I interrupted. "It's different, and it's ready to listen." It was at that moment I sent the sphere the final, clearest image. My own. I gave it everything I had. All my memories, all my knowledge, my name, my damn consciousness. I offered myself, Arthur Coleman, Senior Sonar Operator, as a perfect, complete, voluntary specimen, in exchange for the Vigilance's freedom. The reaction was immediate. The fulfillment. Suddenly, the compartment was illuminated by an unbearable, pulsating light that seemed simultaneously blinding and penetrating. It was alive, as if the very space around us, previously dense and hostile, had become pure, concentrated energy, vibrating in sync with an invisible heart. From its core, from the very epicenter of this light storm, glowing, translucent fibers burst forth. They were thin as spider silk, but their movement was swift and purposeful. They didn't strike or attack, but embraced Thorne and his men, softly, almost gently at first glance, but with a terrifying, inhuman, absolute strength, immobilizing every muscle, every nerve. It was an embrace impossible to break free from, an embrace that stripped away will and movement. Arms, legs, torsos, everything was wrapped in these glowing threads, and they were pulled away from the control panel like rag dolls, deprived of all weight and control. Cries of despair, furious attempts to break free, convulsive movements, all were useless, swallowed by this silent, all-consuming force. The power capable of holding a multi-ton submarine under the pressure of thousands of tons of water now held them, suppressing even the most desperate resistance, turning them into helpless puppets. A deafening silence fell, broken only by their heavy, ragged breathing and the dull thud of my own heart. Thorne, his face contorted with rage and helplessness, looked at me with scorching hatred and chilling incomprehension. In his eyes was a silent question. What have you done? Or perhaps, what are you? And I, all that frantic, chaotic stream of information that had been tearing into my head for the past few hours, images, data, alien thoughts, fragments of other lives and knowledge, suddenly cut off, as if someone had abruptly switched off an invisible circuit breaker. In its place came a feeling, a single, deep, ancient feeling, older than ice and earth, older than the very concept of time. It vibrated in every cell of my being, penetrating to the very depths. Satisfaction. The deal was concluded. And I knew with absolute, unshakable certainty that this was not a metaphor, not a figure of speech. It was reality, the completion of a grand, unimaginable agreement, the terms of which were now clear to me, though inexpressible in human language. An agreement that changed everything. I felt something warm, almost caressing, slide across my legs. They were the same fibers, but now they weren't binding. They were embracing, winding around my ankles, crawling up my body, soft as silk woven from pure light, yet strong as the toughest steel. I didn't resist. I couldn't and didn't want to. The cold that had been chilling me to the bone retreated, giving way to this strange, enveloping warmth. My consciousness expanded, dissolving, merging with something incredibly vast, infinite, that was everything and nothing, past and future, beginning and end. I felt myself not just a part, but an integral, living cell of something immeasurably greater than myself, than humanity, than our entire planet. The last thing I managed to notice before myself finally dissolved into this all-encompassing consciousness. The fibers holding Thorn and his men suddenly unclasped and vanished, as if they had never been there. At that same instant, a power light on the emergency panel, right above Thorn's head, flickered on, with a single, sharp, mechanical click returning to life. And now, for contrast, the officials. Captain Galloway, a man whose career was built on flawless service and strict adherence to protocol, must have been drafting his report for command in a cold sweat. Every word was difficult for him. Every sentence seemed absurd, attempting to make sense of what had happened, which defied any possible explanation. The notation, classified, strictly confidential, for top leadership only, was not merely a formality, but a desperate attempt to conceal something that could undermine the foundations of worldview. Understandably, no one wanted public disclosure. Panic, chaos, madness. That's what could follow if the truth about what happened in the depths of the Arctic came out.